I have fulfilled my vows of revenge. I wasn't surprised that I got a job as a bartender at a very prestigious establishment, which for simplicity and anonymity I'll call Thigh End because I'm a pretty girl with many feminine physical assets. I wasn't an expert mixologist, but I was good enough to get by without it, especially since male customers like to explain things to me in a masculine way when I had questions about this or that exotic drink. But I didn't work to make a lot of money. I could have made more money doing other things, or to expand my knowledge of mixology. Rather, I made vows to my husband who didn't like the last place I worked, and I didn't want to break them. I had been working at Thigh End for about a week when I first saw Jason Williams. He was a well-known figure in our town. Perhaps you could even call him something of a celebrity, though not with the best reputation. He's large and rugged-looking, and he wore an expensive suit, shoes, and tie that must have cost $200 by itself. All the women in the audience seemed to be keeping their eyes on him at one time or another. I expected him to be difficult, maybe even nasty or rude, when he broke away from his companions and headed toward the bar. I hesitated for a couple seconds before approaching him. Instead of a frown, I met a smile on his face. "Hi, I'm Jason Williams," he said, extending his hand. "You must be new here. I haven't seen you before." I shook his hand with what I hoped was a cold, fishy handshake. I hate getting one, and I hoped he didn't like it either, but it didn't seem to faze him. "I'm Virginia Masters," I said, using my maiden name instead of my husband's, Paney, as my last name. "Nice to meet you, Virginia. Have you been bartending long?" "Not quite. I recently changed careers, Mr. Williams. Please call me Jason." "What were you before? A photo model?" I gave a fake smile at that. I was actually a bikini model between the ages of 18 and 23, but from the time I was 24 until now, at the age of 29, I was in real estate. I didn't think my real estate firm was too bad. And yes, the pay was good, but my husband Bryce couldn't stand it. He really didn't like the fact that I was often picked on by scumbags, including the owners of the company. I could handle them, but Bryce didn't like that I had to deal with their lasciviousness. It was in honor of Bryce that I went to work at Thigh End. After Jason chatted with me for a while, I prevented further conversation. I didn't want to get friendly with him, at least not yet, and said, "What can I get you, Jason?" "I'd like Sazerac," he smirked. I'd never heard that word before. "Sorry, Jason, but I've never heard of that drink. Have you drank it here before?" "Probably not," he laughed. "The last few bartenders here haven't been as experienced, and certainly not as pretty as you, but Harold Munger, the owner of the Thigh End, told me he'd get the ingredients." "Well, then I'll look up the recipe on my phone, cook it for you, and bring it to your table." I smiled. "It might take a while, though, because 2 waitresses just took orders," I continued, nodding in the direction where, ta-da, 2 waitresses were just placing orders at the other end of the counter. "No problem," he smiled. "When you have time, Virginia." And then he walked back to the table he was sitting at with his 3 friends. I wondered why he walked over to the bar rather than ordering his drink through the waitress, as his companions had apparently done. I quickly completed the standard waitress orders and then looked up Sazerac on my iPhone. I found it under men's drinks and noted that it included brandy, absinthe, Peychaud's tincture, and sugar, and that it was prepared in an unusual way. I think Williams was telling the truth about Munger's ordering additives for Sazerac, because when I looked in the specialty ingredients drawer, I found Peychaud's bitters, something I'd never even heard of before. It took a while to make Sazerac, but luckily the other bartender, Raymond, had returned from his break to fulfill the waitress's unfulfilled orders, and I was able to take Williams his drink. As I approached Williams's table, the younger guy sitting to his right looked at me intently. When I placed the drink on the table in front of Williams, he smiled and said, "Thank you, Virginia. It looks delicious, and it's in the right type of glass." "My pleasure, Jason," I smiled. "Nice ass," the young man said, grinning. Jason slapped him on the back of the head and growled, "Watch your language and show some respect, Jerry. Now apologize to Virginia." A stiffly reprimanded Jerry muttered, "I'm sorry, Virginia." I just kept the same smile with which I approached the table, didn't even respond to the apology, and headed back to the bar with an important look. I could wiggle my ass when I did this because I have a really nice ass. Despite the fact that Thigh End is a high-class establishment, I expected comments like the one I heard from Jerry, especially after Munger made me wear a uniform that was probably closer to what a Las Vegas dancer would wear than a typical bartender in a respectable Midwestern U.S. city. He also insisted that I not wear my wedding rings. What surprised me wasn't the "nice ass" comment, but that Jason sharply reprimanded his date for it. That was very surprising considering what I knew about Jason. I learned a lot about bartending in the weeks I worked at Thigh End. My co-workers were pleasant, and most of the customers at least weren't rude, although comments like Jerry's were directed at me at least a couple times a night. It wasn't even as bad as when I worked as a bikini model or at the real estate firm my husband Bryce hated, so I didn't really have any problems in the workplace. Jason Williams had always been a regular at Thigh End and started coming even more often when I started working there. Every time he came in, he would seek me out for a conversation. He even invited me to his table when I was on break, which Munger not only didn't judge, but encouraged. Whenever Jason and I interacted, he never said cruel or rude things to me or squinted at me like a significant percentage of our male customers did. He also exhibited smarts. Although I didn't put on an act, I didn't enjoy being with Jason Williams as much as most other women did. I mean, he was handsome, smart, rich, and charming, but I had made vows to Bryce and I wanted to keep them. So when I had strange, loving thoughts about Jason, I didn't like it. I remembered the lyrics from the song "Wicked Game," one of my favorites, which seemed appropriate for this situation. It's strange what desire drives stupid people to do. I never dreamed I'd meet someone like you. No, I don't want to fall in love with you. I began to wonder if Jason's bad reputation matched reality. It seemed that he really was as charming as he pretended to be. However, I tried to put those thoughts aside because I had made my vows to Bryce, and I'm a person who keeps her word. After Jason showed up at Thigh End about 3 months ago and I was regularly amazed by his charm, the next logical thing happened. He invited me to dinner. I was expecting it and by then had mixed feelings about it, but decided to go. Sunday night, I was off work when Jason picked me up at the Thigh End where I worked during the day. I had changed out of my bar uniform into a stylish but revealing long blue dress with a slit at the side almost down to my panties. Jason was charming at dinner, but afterward, when he invited me to his penthouse, he was more demanding than charming. Still, I went with him. Although I remembered my vows to my husband Bryce in the elevator on the way upstairs, yet somehow, clutching my purse in my hands, I calmed down. As we entered his penthouse, Jason's personality changed. He became swaggering very quickly. It wasn't long before he took off my dress and started running his hands all over my body. I found that he was even stronger than he looked, especially when he took off his shirt and his bulging muscles were exposed. At that moment, I realized that resistance would be futile and counterproductive besides, so I let him have his way with me. When he carried me to his bed, however, I made sure to take my purse with me, even though my clothes were in a big pile in his living room. Despite my vows to Bryce, I was pretty much helpless at that point, and I saw no reason not to get a little physical pleasure out of the situation, even if Jason revealed his true rapist traits. So we made love. And afterward I reached into my purse, which I'd kept by my side during our love-making gymnastics, and pulled out a syringe. "Say, Jason," I said in a sing-song voice, "do you remember Lisa and Bryce Payne?" When he opened his eyes, Jason had a very confused look on his face, and despite the fact that he was high on me making love to him, he mumbled, "You mean that crazy fool who accused me of molesting her and then killed herself, and her annoying brother?" "Yes, exactly them," I chuckled. quickly sticking the hypodermic needle into his left testicle and injecting the contents of the syringe. Of course, he involuntarily twitched when I did this, so much so that despite the fact that he was on top of me, I was catapulted off the bed. Luckily, the carpet in his bedroom was thick and soft, so I didn't hurt myself landing on it. Jason cried out in pain and finally pulled the hypodermic needle out of his testicle, though not too carefully, so there was blood everywhere. As he was squirming in pain, his eyes met mine, and he saw hatred in them. Then the chemicals from the needle kicked in, and before he could reach me, probably hoping to strangle me to death, he collapsed, squirming in agony. I enjoyed the fact that his death spasms were evidence of the excruciating pain he was in. The chemicals in the syringe, as advertised, ensured that his death was as agonizing as possible. Once he stopped moving, I waited a few more minutes, then felt his pulse to make sure he was dead. Then I took the syringe, put it in a plastic bag in my purse, got dressed, and walked down the stairs to the back entrance of his luxury high-rise. I knew that good forensic scientists would eventually be able to find my DNA and maybe even fingerprints at the crime scene. But neither my DNA nor fingerprints were in any database, and I was already planning to move to Australia using the life insurance money from Bryce's death. The next day, I went to the cemetery and knelt at Bryce's headstone, which was next to that of his sister, Lisa. Laying flowers on his grave, I tearfully said, "I got him, Bryce. I fulfilled my vows to you. The guy who drove Lisa to suicide and ordered you killed when you complained to the authorities is dead, and it was an excruciatingly painful death, just like I promised. I won't be back to see you for a while. I want things to calm down before I return, but you will be in my heart every day." After crying enough, I stood up, double-checked my travel bag for a fake passport in the name Rachel Watts, and a ticket to Australia in the same name, and headed for the cab waiting for me on the inner cemetery road next to Bryce's headstone. I was starting my new life, having fulfilled my promises to the love of my life to avenge the pre-molestation, suicide, and for Bryce's murder. The end.